Thank you for joining us in this side event today to discuss how to enhance collaborative efforts between parties and non-state actors in the post-Global Stocktake period. My name is Chisa Umemiya. I am a research manager at the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies. Together with me on the stage are my co-collaborators from West African Science Service Center on Climate Change and Adapted Land Use, University of Technology, Malaysia, and Institute for Climate and Sustainable Cities. I would also like to acknowledge the support from Climate Works Foundation for this event. In this session, we'd like to explore how non-state actors and state actors can effectively collaborate during the post-GST period to update and enhance the next round of NDCs. Non-state actors, or NSA in short, include civil society organizations, research institutes, universities, the private sectors, cities and local governments, communities, among others, in the context of GST. The technical phase of the first GST clearly indicated that the collaborative efforts between parties and non-state actors are essential to address the gaps we identify in the GST-1. How do we ensure such collaboration possible in the follow-up of the GST is a question we'd like to discuss with you today at this session. Let me explain how the session flows. First, my co-lead for the independent Global Stocktake Southeast Asia Hub, Danica Supnet of ICSC, and I will deliver a short framing presentation. Then you will hear two NSA collaboration cases from my co-collaborators. And following that will be an interactive discussion session with panelists from diverse backgrounds, including a government, local government, private sector, and a funding institution. Finally, we would like to discuss next steps to enhance collaboration between state actors and non-state actors in the follow-up of the global stocktakes. In between, we would also like to take questions and receive feedback from the room as much as possible. May I now invite Danica to take the floor.
Thank you very much, Chisa. All right. Thank you very much, Chisa. I will be sharing with you a presentation on delivering a robust global stocktake, looking at key points and opportunities from the intersessional phase of the GST-1. We would like to share with you what have been our journey as we are now here at COP28 and what has been the journey so far with the global stocktake. And here we have, of course, the UNFCCC share the temporal framework of the global stocktake, which outlines the key activities and milestone of the GST-1. This also serves as a basis for the independent community to develop strategies to follow the process, convene discussions and collaborations. So it's also an opportunity looking at just the activities, raising the voices of non-party stakeholders, whether as part of the technical assessment, looking at the temporal framework again, looking at the information collection and preparation phase, the technical assessments, and of course, looking at opportunities outside of the formal processes. Just looking at the temporal framework, looking at where we are here at COP28 now, and there has been so many things that has happened already, but this is also a good basis for non-party stakeholders to outline our activities. And outside of the formal processes, I would like to share with you some of the opportunities that the Independent Global Stocktake Southeast Asia Hub has outlined, creating an opportunity, of course, for a regional bottom-up perspective of the global stocktake, and not merely cascading the discussions at the international level down to the regions and the countries. I think very important aspect of our discussion today is looking at the opportunities for a bottom-up approach, looking at opportunities on how we can ensure that our initiatives at the local level, perspectives of stock taking at the local and national level can be a lessons learned at the regional level. And of course, that would be our key to elevating our voices at the global processes as well. After this one, we can see that there are also opportunities that happened during the GST Intersessional Workshop that happened last October 12 to 14 in Abu Dhabi, UAE. So fast forward to this activity, the workshop was convened to discuss the key elements outlined in the GST synthesis report based on the two views, backward-looking and forward-looking aspects. And during this workshop also identified areas of convergence and divergence that can be considered in the final elements of GST1, which we are anticipating in the next few days as well. So non-party stakeholders also took part in this workshop, and we were given an avenue to provide interventions in the key thematic areas of the GST. So it is also important to highlight that the synthesis report recognized not only the submissions of non-party stakeholders that were highly referenced in the document, but was also recognized in our potential role in the NDC updating phase and international cooperation. And that's also an important aspect that we need to follow after the COP28. In a backward-looking aspect, the document shows the collective progress, gaps, challenges, and barriers. But while we see that this is a win, especially that we recognize the important role of non-party stakeholders, but based on this backward-looking aspect, many reports states that we are not on track to meet the Paris Agreement goals. And so substantial work lies ahead of us. But very important part of our synthesis report is an outline of the forward-looking aspect, highlighting the opportunities and messages for further action. So looking at just the forward-looking views, it provides us a snapshot of what we can do for now and, of course, in the next few years that lies ahead of us. We can look at possibilities of in-country technical policy developments, encourage collaboration, of course, with parties and non-party stakeholders, and, of course, we can also develop advocacy campaigns to communicate the outcomes of the GST1 to the region, to the national levels, and, of course, at the local levels. Very important aspect also of the synthesis report is strengthening the international cooperation by leveraging a regional stock taking. I think this is also an important approach when we highlight bottom-up approaches, looking at local and national level experiences as important building blocks. If we want to elevate really our voices at the national and even at the regional level, it's the local voices that needs to be highlighted as well, especially when we go to the NDC updating phases. Now, what we are here at COP28, we've heard a strong opening from the COP presidency and calls on all parties, of course, to put the GST outcome as a top priority. The high-level roundtable discussions already started this afternoon, and we expect, of course, a robust CMA decision encompassing collective progress and political messages and opportunities, leaving no one left behind. And that's what we can also follow, not only at the end of the high-level discussions, but after, of course, the COP28, and of course, once we go back to our countries and share our experiences. And I think that's my presentation.
Thank you. I'll continue. And from here, I'd like to share our discussion at the Independent Global Stocktake Southeast Hub on how non-state actors and parties can specifically collaborate. And I think this can be a good starting point for today's discussion. Next, please. We have summarized our discussions into 3 policy recommendations and submitted to the first Global Stocktake process last September. We also had a one-day event at the Asia Pacific Climate Week 2 weeks ago in Malaysia to discuss those recommendations with regional stakeholders. Our first policy recommendation is to integrate the role of non-state actors into the national policy-making process in the follow-up period of GST-1. We believe NSA can contribute the follow-up of the GST-1 in multiple ways. For instance, engaging with governments, updating the NDC directly, or promoting actions on the ground. At the APCW, we discussed that when we talk about NSA in the GST, NSA include various actors, the private sector, financial institutions, cities, and other subnational authorities, etc. And therefore, we need more concrete stories from various actors in the region, what specific roles these different NSA can play in when it comes to the national policy-making process. And one of the roles that we think non-state actors might be able to take in the follow-up of the GST-1 is to conduct a regional stocktake, which Danica briefly touched on. And we believe a regional stocktake is a very good way to help translating the outcome of the GST-1 into regional and national context, especially since we already have a number of initiatives at the region level or even national or local levels of the group of people working on different topics in climate field. And at the APCW, we discussed that if successful, Global Stocktake can connect governments and non-state actors ever more strongly. And we need to have creative ideas how to connect Global Stocktake discussions with regional, national, and local actions. And another possible role that we think non-state actors might be able to take in the follow-up of the Global Stocktake is to, together with governments, build in-country mechanism for updating NDCs, considering the outcome of the GST-1. And we know making such a mechanism is not easy, but at the APCW, we discussed that GST should not end up only for assessing collective progress, but rather it should look for filling the gaps we identify in the GST-1. So we need a clear follow-up mechanism to do this after the COP28. And to do this, we discussed we need to understand the common area of collaboration and interest between governments and non-state actors. And we hope we can discuss more on these topics and other topics in relation to the follow-up period of the Global Stocktake today at this session. And this is the end of our presentation. And now we would like to present you two more additional NSA collaboration cases in the context of the post-Global Stocktake. And after that, we will have a short time to receive a question from the floor. May I now invite Dr. Kwame Oppong Hackman, who is a senior scientist at WASCAL, to talk about the initiative called Independent Global Stocktake West Africa Hub. Kwame, you have the floor.
Thank you very much indeed, Chisa, for that. Before I start, I have a short video that I have sent. I hope you can play that for me to set the stage for our discussion today.
You need that video first before the PP.
The video first.
to be said from what has been achieved since Paris.
The hub has been open now, so I think the process has been duly completed, and we are still going to take other steps to make sure that this particular hub is what it's supposed to be. So I am encouraging especially the third sector of development, Son and Food, that is the civil society. I also talk about the researchers, the scientists, and then even the first sector of development, which is the government, to be involved in this particular process that we are working on now.
This is really the launch of our IGST regional hub in West Africa. I just want to now use the opportunity to speak a bit to the video that we just watched about this IGST initiative that is in West Africa that started nearly a year and a half ago in our region. With the support of the Climate Works Foundation that is here, we started this unique initiative of gathering civil society organizations in our region in West Africa, mainly to contribute to the implementation of the Paris Agreement, with focus on the GST. So the idea of it was to gather the civil society in our region of West Africa with focus on the 16 ECOWAS countries. And the idea of it was to contribute to the implementation of the Paris Agreement with a focus on the GST. I need to state that we had to use a bottom-up approach, which really took us a long time to ensure that there is equity and inclusivity in the whole process. Now, we used a number of steps, to form it. All I'm trying to do is to try to give you the background to all that we are doing in the region, to see that we have a civil society organization that is there, that is ready, to contribute to this whole engagement, as my colleagues have already said. So we started with a stakeholder mapping process. We did a regional assessment to see their needs in terms of their perspectives and all of that. We held country-level consultations with them to help us define what would be the operationalization document or the modalities of engagement for us. And then finally, we launched the hub, and that is what you saw in the video. Now, I would like to briefly touch on some of the GST-related activities we have done even after we have launched the hub. Some of it involves awareness creation, large-scale awareness creation in the whole of the region. And to do that, we used online meetings, physical meetings, and also we used the regional climate events to make sure that we speak a lot about the GST process. Now, the reason for this is that in our region, the whole place was silent about the issue of GST. So we needed to use the platform as an avenue, to speak to this. In addition to that, we have contributed also to the submission of inputs for consideration in the first, GST that is just about to end. And then we have also actively participated in the technical discussions under the GST. I want to now talk about some of the challenges that we have had so far. In fact, being a bottom-up approach has been a very slow process. And it's very time-consuming. But I need to state that Another also challenge is in terms of the management of the language, as we have to deal with 3 official languages in the region. But more importantly is the sustainability of the hub. All the members are asking, how are we going to sustain it? How are we going to sustain their interest has been a major issue, for our hub. Now, I want to now talk briefly about some of the strategies that we are looking at, even as we go, to the next stage after the first GST, just in line with what my colleagues have already said. I think that one of the main things that we need to do is to work towards lobbying to ensure that our parties in the region give us endorsement, to allow us to contribute to the process of the updating of the NDCs. But another activity that we are yet to start at the beginning of next year is we have already recruited a youth-based think tank. 6 of them who are going to study all the NDCs and see their implementation and give us concrete information that would allow us to engage properly even as we move to the next stage. But another thing also that we are looking at is to continue our efforts in building capacity in our region, in all areas, in all topics that relate to the GST. But I would say the last activity that we are also thinking of doing, which is a strategy for us, is to initiate some small grant projects, because our people are always asking, we need action on the ground. So we have been able to secure a small fund that would allow us to initiate some activities on the ground to allow them, to actively participate. Now, for the sake of time, I would want to end here, but this is our website. You can go there and read a lot about us. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Kwame, for sharing the initiative from the West African region. And without further ado, I'd like to invite next speaker, Professor Dr. Ho Chin Siong from the University of Technology, Malaysia, to talk about NSA and local government policy and action for carbon neutrality. Dr. Ho, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chisa. Thank you. Very good evening to all. My name is Ho, and I'm from Malaysia. Let me bring you from West Africa to Asia, a country called Malaysia. Can I have my slide, please? Can I use the remote from here? Okay. Yeah, it's working now. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, I will use the case of Malaysia cities. How do you go about to achieve carbon neutrality? First of all, I think for those people who are not familiar with Malaysia, it's a small country, about 30 million people. We are located in between big countries like China and India. So as a country which is relatively small, we have a fair lot of issues related to carbon. We are a very rapid urbanized country, rapid industrialization, very highly dependent on carbon, especially on fossil fuel, and private car ownership is very high. But nevertheless, government have done a lot of good work, policy work, and we have also declared to be a carbon neutral nation by the year of 2050. And of course, I have listed out some of the policies that Malaysians have done. The latest is the national energy transition, which is one of the biggest one. And this slide shows that Malaysia is a small country, but we are very concerned about this carbon because our per capita is high, 10.12. So I think this is something that Malaysians pay very serious attention. And I can see that this is the chronological policies that we have done to achieve carbon neutrality. So, of course, when we talk about GST, I think one of the very important things is science to action. Science to action here, meaning to say that I think we must have a good GST, a global stock, to start off with. And we from the University of Technology, we use the approach of science to action, or we call it a kind of MRV, measure, report, and verify standard. And as a whole, we are working very closely with JICA, IGES, and NIES, and also with GCOM and PNNL, quite a number of organizations we have worked with, and we have done so far close to 20 plus cities. And we believe science to action important because it's evidence-based, is optimum choice, and give us a lot participatory approach and interdisciplinary. And these are some examples that we have done together with JICA and JST Japan for the first project. We call science-based climate action, and you can see some of the work that we published. First, we start with the blueprint, then we have tools for action, then later stock taking and monitoring. So these are the core scientific method that we have done. The first city was Iskandar, Malaysia. The second case example is the GCOM cities. We work on and all about 8 cities now. These are some examples of the 8 cities. We set target, we do inventory, then we do plan action. So these are the work that we have done, and some of these, probably some report, if you are interested to know, all these are in soft copy also. We have prepared our climate action plan. And these are a list of examples of cities that we have done. As I mentioned, we use modeling, working together with NIES. Then we come up with a report. And in the report, we have this target setting and how to achieve this until the year of 2050, carbon neutral. So this documentation, we believe is very important. Actually for GST, these are important for local authorities to follow through from inventory until action. Examples of these cities that, for instance, we are using series. This is one of the city inventory reporting system. These are 4 cities that we have done for last year. And we list out the population, the emission reduction potential, and what are the emission target. And of course, we also go by sector. For instance, energy sector, transport sector, and then community sector, then adaptation. Then, as I mentioned, we go by these cities in terms of plan action. We have go by theme. Example, I just take one city. Sheikh Selamat is one of the very important cities in terms of agriculture. We go into sustainable energy and green building, green commuting, logistics, conservation, biodiversity, community-based climate response, and disaster. So in all these 5 themes, we have 30 plan action. 30 plan action means 30 projects to be undertaken. And from there, we can understand how much carbon we can reduce. So this is an example like Putrajaya. We work out their kind of inventory, their team for actions. I may not be able to go through all the actions. This is an example like team action for energy. We have renewable energy policies. We have energy efficiency projects. Then under Team 2, urban planning and building, we have urban design projects and building. So it goes to Team 3, mobility, blue and green, community and climate resilience. I'll take the third case of Kuala Lumpur. I think my nation partner here, she will explain about KL, but this is basically we have also done for KL. And we also done the modeling for them, inventory, and then we move into action. How to translate this kind of inventory and carbon reduction into action. So using modeling, for instance, in this case, baseline 2010, 2050, what will be a situation under BAU, and what are the potential reduction, and what are the projects that can be done to reduce carbon. So we list out the projects. They are all in all 20 projects to be done for the next another 17 years. And these are examples of the projects that we have done. But in addition, the interesting thing is that we also work together with other cities. T2 KL cities example is Tokyo to Kuala Lumpur low carbon system. This is another project that we have done very successfully. And we also brought in actually Saitama City together with us, and actually they are very successful. We won the C40 award. With that, I would like to make 4 takeaway or 4 conclusion. One is that we have completed about 20 climate action plan Malaysian cities with list of policies and plan action from evidence-based information. Secondly, we believe a good scientific research is important. This is where the GST come in. And we also believe that we need to implement, because the city mayors are always impatient, not only stock taking, but they also wanted to see what are the things that can be done. Thirdly, we believe there must be a benchmarking cities with other Asian cities. That's why we work with Tokyo, we work with Saitama, and many other cities around the world. Fourth, stock taking from climate action plan preparation can be a local or state government, as well as the federal government, can strengthen the outcome of NDC and GST, which we believe strongly this is one way approach. The fifth one is that we believe city may collaborate with international agency, whether it's IGES or any other international agency, to fund joint researches and good practices of climate action are important for developing countries like Malaysia to accelerate this transformation. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'd like to take, if any questions from the floor, perhaps on the technical side of the presentation we just heard. We're going to have the panel discussion, so if anything related to more about the engagement of the NSA, we can keep those questions to the panel discussion. But otherwise, about what has been presented, if you have any questions, please raise your hand.
Yeah, no problem.
Like you mentioned in your presentation that Malaysia is mainly dependent on fossil fuels. So you mentioned that they're basically dependent on fossil fuels, and what will be the actions taken also for the industries or sectors that will be affected for these Malaysian cities to be able to reach the target by 2050. So how do you plan to also like what are the plans for the transition to make sure that these sectors are also not left behind by the transition?
Yeah, I think countries with low petrol price is always a problem. It distorts the whole market, and the demand for petrol become more and more, and people are willing to use are more tends to use bigger car. So I think this is what Malaysian government are very concerned. We are now promoting a lot of EV and all those. Fossil fuel, for instance, we start off with trying to close down some of the coal power generation plant. So we will give them until 2030. So there's a timeline that there's no more coal power plant. So I think that energy transition is very important. Secondly, we are now moving into transportation. So we are moving from fossil fuel to biodiesel first. And then at the same time, we are promoting strongly on these EV vehicles. So there is a kind of incentive for us to go into these EV vehicles. Of course, the motorbike, EV in terms of motorbike, I think the recent APCW, if you are in Johor, recently on the Asia Pacific Climate Week, we have launched our so-called EV for motorbike. So that's one way forward. So I think we believe young countries like Malaysia, developing and industrialized so fast, fossil fuel is one way to let us to power our economy. But we know that this cannot be long run. We have to really move, transition into kind of a lower carbon. Yeah. So I think I think this is something concern most of us. I think. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we can have one more question if there is any. I actually have one question to Professor Ho. You mentioned about the inventories and MRV at the city level, which is very impressive. I'm just curious, how does that inform or link to the national government NDC? Is there any system right now in Malaysia to connect those two different levels?
The quick answer is no. There's no directly, but we engage with them very frequently. We are doing the city level, and we are trying to use, we are using the GPC. That means the reporting system using Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3, using what global standard are using. So I think this is something very important to have a correct format, so that when we report at the city level, that can be translated later to be used by the national level. The national government haven't really imposed anything on the local authorities, but this is more like we university taking the initiative, working with the local authorities, prepare the inventory for them, and then we hope that this could roll out to other cities. And then as a university, we cannot produce so many inventory for so many cities. There are about 147 local authorities. We have only covered about 20. But now we have worked out a manual. With the help of GCOM, we worked out a manual. EU government fund us actually to come up with a manual we call Climate Action Plan. And that manual actually teaches them, if local authorities who do not have funding, they can try to follow the manual. But as I mentioned, I think also faced by African cities or countries, it's quite difficult because this is something they need to do with the help of the technical expert. So we are also trying to introduce this into the university syllabus in such a way that the university graduate from our universities are able to conduct this kind of work, so that a batch of 50 students or 100 students a year, so when we roll out these students, when they go out into the market, they can help us to promote this kind of system. So the template is becoming important for us. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So let's give a big hand again to the first three speakers. And we would like to move on to the second part. And now I'd like to invite the panelists to come to the stage. Please, panelists, come on the stage, please. Thank you. Nice to see all the panelists together. We have a panelist, let me introduce, representing the government perspective for this panel discussion. We have Mr. Isaac Kwabena Danso from the Environmental Protection Agency of Ghana. Very nice meeting you. Thank you for coming. And from local government, we have Ms. Noel Jana Afandi, who is a Deputy Director of the City Planning Department of Kuala Lumpur City Hall. Very welcome, thank you for coming. And from the private sector, we have Mr. Fernando Castellanos, who is the Head of Environment and Climate of the UN Global Compact. And finally, but not the least, from the funding institution, we have Ms. Josefina Cobian, a Program Manager, Global Intelligence of the Climate Works Foundation. Thank you very much for all the panelists coming. And it's great to have all the panelists coming from the diverse backgrounds, as I said, covering government, local government, private sector, and funding institution. And then in the previous session, we had about the NSA collaboration cases, and we highlighted the potential area of collaboration that parties and non-state actors might be able to take in the post-Global Stocktake period. And now we would like to hear from you about your story, how you think about this collaboration can happen in the post-GST period. So I'd like to start with Mr. Isaac. You are leading the process of updating the NDC in Ghana. And we are keen on understanding how you think, from your perspective, the role of non-state actors in updating the NDC process. What do you think are the opportunities for non-state actors to engage with the government like you in updating NDC, especially building on the outcome of the first GST? What area of collaboration with the NSA do you think as helpful from the government perspective? And it would be great to hear your story in the Ghana context.
Okay. Thank you very much, and good evening to everybody here. And I must confess, I'm very happy to be on this platform to discuss such a great topic. First of all, I would say that the non-state actors are the major stakeholders in this discussion. In this discussion, the governments are very little. For instance, if I take this event happening in Dubai here as an example, we have the blue zone and the green zone. And you can see that most of the green zone are having people from the non-state. But even with the blue zone, you could see that it's mixed. Having part of the people, the observers coming from the non-state, and even with the party delegates, some coming from the non-state actors. So it means that they are the bigger majority, and the governments cannot do anything without involving them. So coming back to the topic of discussion, most of these innovative ideas, most of this expertise are coming from these people. So the government, you come up with the policies. If you don't have people to implement the policies you set up, then you have nowhere to go. So these people are the ones who will come up with the innovative ideas to drive the policies you are putting in place. The other aspect too is about the data collection and monitoring. The fellow speakers who ended the previous session, they were talking about inventory and all those things. How do you get the data for this inventory? It's coming from these people. The inventory is what will translate into your NDCs, because your inventory will show where you are actually emitting. And based on that, that is where you come up with program of actions to develop your NDCs. So if you're not getting the data, if you're not getting these people to give you the right data, how can you come up with your inventory for it to transcend into your NDCs? Now we are talking about updating the NDCs. You can only update your NDC when you have activities on the ground, or you have the research to back what you can do to remove, avoid, and reduce these emissions. So if they are not in place for this kind of work, you can't do it alone. You need their backing. The other aspect too is on how they can even do it. Capacity building is very key for them. As we are here negotiating tests and coming up with all these things, how do you interpret this for them to understand? How do you deconstruct the terminologies in there for them to pick it up, for them to drive this innovation we are talking about? We talk about investment and finance. We have these people in there to support one way or the other. So they play, in fact, the major role in it. Because of their role, you cannot do your policy without including them. So for instance, if you take Ghana, for instance, updating our recent NDCs, what we did was, after the government sectors developed or drafted the NDCs, we held them, we engaged them, showed them what is on the ground. Now they brought in their perspective, because mostly they are the ones on the ground, they are the ones doing the work on the ground, they are the ones implementing them. So if you don't engage them to get their perspective in order to broaden the horizon, then you are not doing yourself any good. Then the last part I will talk about is advocacy and awareness creation. They are the people who do this work most. After you put up your policies, after you put up your NDCs, who will voice them out? It's the same people. So they are the chunk of people, they are the massive number of people you have to engage. You have to create that enabling environment for them to operate. Else, whatever you do will just be in hawks. It will just be there and there will be no form of implementation. Or even if there will be some form of implementation, it will be limited because you alone cannot do everything. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Isaac. I think I'm taking one message from you is that in every step of the NDC development update, NSA are there to support, and without them, you are not able to develop the NDC and update NDC. That is one of the messages I take from you. Thank you very much. I might come back to you later, but thank you so much. And now I'd like to move on to Ms. No from local government perspective. And as we heard from the professor whole presentation earlier, we understand, including Kuala Lumpur, many cities in Malaysia are promoting action on the ground in close collaboration with academia. And as I asked question to Professor Ho, I'm very curious how such a local action is actually connected to NDC, and maybe making that connection is not very easy, and I don't think it's only Malaysia who doesn't have that system. It's not common yet. That's my understanding at least. And given this context and also thinking about the post-Global Stocktake period, I'd like to ask you, what do you think are the opportunities for cities and local governments to engage with the government, central governments updating NDC, and how does that benefit your current effort and initiative on the ground? And it would be great to hear again your story in the Kuala Lumpur context.
Okay, thank you, Madam. Assalamualaikum warahmatullah, and good evening to everyone. As you know, Kuala Lumpur is the city of Malaysia. They're also facing a lot of natural disaster due to the climate change, as you can see right now in the slide. And therefore, we have developed several master plans to help us to reduce climate change. And I have to emphasize here how important it is for us to work together, both locally and globally, to address urban challenges. Collaboration with university, NGOs, government agencies, and private companies are example of this. Sorry, okay. Sorry, I think I know. Press the button. Okay. Okay. Japan has been and continues to be a vital partner of us, working with the IGES and the Tokyo Metropolitan Government, TMG, such as Prof mentioned, on the Kuala Lumpur Low Carbon Society project for energy efficient and low carbon efforts is one of our most important collaboration. Okay. The recognition of Kuala Lumpur and Tokyo at 2022 C40 Cities and Bloomberg Philanthropies Awards under the name of United in Building a Climate Movement give us a great pleasure. We are happy to work with Japan to help the region move towards carbon neutrality, and we believe that our partnership will not only be beneficial to both cities but also serve as an example for future international collaboration among cities. As a result of our previous collaboration with the Tokyo Metropolitan Government, we have now started a collaboration relationship between Kuala Lumpur and Saitama City, which it is still continuing. We are grateful for Japan's assistance and support, which enables Kuala Lumpur to collaboration with Japanese cities in the fight against global climate change. Okay, sorry, my slide is not follows through. Okay. In addition, we work with C40 to implement projects that can address climate change in city. This effort is carried out in collaboration with the city finance facilities, in collaboration with GIES, and with the support of Germany, the United Kingdom, and France until 2024. Kuala Lumpur has identified 27 buildings and assets that have potentially to be upgraded with energy efficient and renewable energy component. Okay. Through the execution of master plans, supportive guidance, and collaboration with various stakeholders, we have done many bottom-up and community-based programs and initiatives to become a carbon neutral city by year 2050. As you can see at the slide, among of our initiative, this is we are put solar panel for our buildings and community. Okay, support also we get a good support from private sector to achieve carbon neutrality, especially from Japanese company. There is among the first company done it, then followed by the others after that. Okay. We also provide 78 electrical buses, namely Go KL, to give free bus service for public throughout the city. Okay. With the implementation of the comprehensive transportation system, including the electric train transportation system, the transportation industry will be able to reduce the carbon emission of the city of Kuala Lumpur by more than 40,000 tons of carbon dioxide in 2022. Okay. We also focus on providing the electric vehicle charge station bay to support the national aspiration, such as Prof mentioned. Therefore, how we impose, we are going to impose the condition and planning approval so that all the developer should provide a bay for the EV. That is our way how to encourage people to using EV vehicles. Okay. By creating an extensive network of shared bicycle lane, pedestrian walkway throughout the city, we also encourage residents of Kuala Lumpur to take up walking and cycling. Another important initiative that we are currently working hard to impose solid waste management in the city. For instance, a couple of public housing under Kuala Lumpur City Hall were introduced with a new incentive of rental payment scheme. That means one community, one recycle initiative, or we call it 1C1R. This program accelerates recycling effort so that our public housing tenant can use recycling to offset their monthly rent. Other initiative we have done is we plant 1 million trees by 2023. That is our target. So that that is among our program, the effort to increase the gross urban tree planting that act as carbon absorber. Many programs have been carried out which have been fully supported by stakeholders. These include the Ministry of Education Malaysia, the university, government agency, NGOs, partner, private sector, and the local community. Okay. Currently, we are in the process to impose low carbon checklist for building. That means we related to the basic requirement to be applied to new building as well as existing building. They are to reuse or restore. So whatever planning application the owner want to submit, whether planning approval or building approval, they must comply with this checklist to ensure whatever building is reduced carbon emission. Okay. On behalf of the Lord Mayor, Kuala Lumpur City Hall believe that with a master plan and comprehensive action on initiative and program, Kuala Lumpur is on the right track to reduce 70% carbon emission intensity in year 23 towards becoming a carbon neutral city by year 2050. With that, thank you, Madam.
Thank you. Thank you very much. May I now move to Mr. Fernando? When we talk about the post-GST period, Global Stocktake clearly indicated also the important role of the private sector to play, not only for climate action, but also finance, for instance. And I think, at least in my country, where I come from, Japan, some private companies are also accelerate their commitments to be in line with the Paris Agreement. And some of them are also reporting their own action towards those goals to be more accountable. And I think these features of the private sector can really push further the updating of the NDC by governments, directly or indirectly. So given this background, I'd like to ask you a question. Do you think the private sector would also be interested in engaging with the NDC updating process after this COP28 in the post-GST era? And what kind of opportunity or incentives do you think would encourage the private sector to engage with the NDC updating process, building on the outcome of the Global Stocktake 1?
Thank you very much, Isha, and thank you very much to WASCAL and the organizers for inviting me to be here. Well, at the Global Compact, we have about over 18,000 business participants in our membership globally. And what we hear from them is really that a high interest in the process. And we see it not only in the amount of business representatives that come every year to the COP, but also throughout the year that they want to engage in climate action. They want to learn what they need to do. And I think they are very much interested in having a policy dialogue with the policymakers and the GST process following this year. That for the next GST, I think the private sector would be very interested in being part of that, in engaging in a real policy dialogue where they can have an honest exchange that would look at two sides in the different roles that governments at the various levels have, and businesses and other non-state actors as well, because we really need collaboration among all stakeholders. But in these policy dialogues, they can try to find a way for governments to create enabling environments for businesses to be able to invest in the right direction and move away from fossil fuels, either production or consumption of fossil fuels. But also that the process also takes into account that the actions that businesses commit, pledge, or indicate or plan that they want to do in support of the Paris Agreement are credible, and that they are also held accountable. So it has to be this balance, and that is achievable through a dialogue between the various stakeholders. And we have heard from some companies in our membership, for instance, including in Japan, how they have more control into addressing Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. But then when it comes to Scope 3, then they run into a little bit of a challenge. Or in certain places, they might encounter that there's not renewable energy available, so the company, not being a utility and energy producer, has no access to renewables. And in some cases, they might not be allowed through some regulations that might exist to invest in renewables themselves. They might also not have the expertise to do it. So these kind of dialogues in the GST can help make sure that the NDCs in sort of being updated, being more ambitious, address these sort of gaps from the ambition that they state and the action that is needed, and have that link. I think that having this dialogue in itself is an incentive for the private sector to participate. I think they're very willing to have their voices heard in an open way with the governments and also have feedback. It has to be a two-way conversation. So the incentive is there, I think, just by having these dialogues in themselves. But there's also quite a lot of opportunities in sort of looking into what's needed to really support the private sector investments. How can they really contribute and align with the Paris Agreement goals, with the NDCs of national governments, and to achieving also themselves their targets on net zeros and being able to reach those targets. So we are, at the Global Compact, we encourage governments to look into their investments, particularly those companies that have a target validated under the Science-Based Targets Initiative that we are part of, to look into, are they putting their money where their mouth is? Are they making these investments in the right direction? And if not, then why? What needs to be addressed, whether inside the company or in the environment in which they operate, rather than being an exercise of pointing fingers, but being an exercise of identifying what needs to be done, what's missing, and what may need to be taken out. And in all these, of course, safeguards need to be in place to ensure other environmental concerns beyond emission reductions are taken into account, but we also look at the social aspects, just transition, human rights. So it's imperative that we address climate looking at the wider lens of the problem.
Thank you very much for sharing. It's new to me to know that even private sector needs capacity building in some way or another, and that's very new to me. So I already think private sector has a technology and skills and knowledge so that they are doing business, but it's not really the case. As you said, it needs to have the holistic view to think about the climate and in a broader context. Then they certainly need certain aspects of capacity building.
May I react to that? Yes, I think sort of one needs to realize that businesses in the end are comprised of people. There's turnover in businesses, and people need capacity buildings irrespective of the companies. And a company may be generating a really high amount of revenue, but that doesn't translate necessarily directly into the company knowing anything beyond its core businesses. And as companies hire, the new hires need to learn how the business itself works and how the corporate culture, what the individual needs to do precisely. And so in many cases, the education on what's needed to address climate change, to address other social issues as the company moves forward in its mission or vision that at least large companies have. Sort of the employees and at every level and the investors themselves need to learn and have that capacity building into how to address climate change in the position they are in as well.
Thank you very much. It's a very big learning for me today. Yes, so now coming to Josefina. So we've been discussing the potential collaborative areas for between non-state actors and parties in the post-Global Stocktake period. And when we think about, for example, having dialogue, for the private sector, etc., we would need the finance to enable those activities. So coming from the funding institution, I have a question to you, that what is your view on the opportunity of funding that might cover areas of collaboration or activity as we discuss here today in the follow-up of the Global Stocktake? And we know that Global Stocktake, at least its technical phase, send out a strong message that non-state actors should be there to work together with government updating NDC. But do you think this message is enough to ensure those funding opportunity available for non-state actors to engage actively in the post-Global Stocktake period?
Thank you, Chisa. And well, it's great to be here hearing about all of these examples from different sectors. I guess first, a very short answer to your last question. I think that should be enough to signal the importance of non-state actors in the process, and that should be enough to bring the funding where it should be. I think I would like to go then back to the broad picture. And with the Global Stocktake, we are closing 2 years of a very extensive process where the spaces for non-state actors, for non-party stakeholders have been unique in the UNFCCC system. It has been a process where more clear spaces have been open for non-party stakeholders. And I think it's definitely for a reason. I think it's because non-state actors are the ones that at the end, as we are hearing from cities, are doing the implementation, as we are hearing from private sector, are necessary, necessary elements to put the funding, and as we're hearing from government, can help connect these levels in between the national and the local area. So definitely, I think a big win, as you mentioned, to have non-state actors mentioned here. I think thinking about the funding spaces, funding needs to also adapt to the challenges. As we heard in the first presentation from Dr. Hackman, like having a true bottom-up process and creating these platforms takes a lot of time, and that I'm sure translates into needing resources. So I think funding needs to be flexible, needs to adapt to the challenges, and needs to be more accessible for what's needing. I think the IGST, which is what I'm representing today, as well as ClimateWorks Foundation, was created as a space and a platform for different stakeholders to come together, but also to bring the voices of non-state actors and non-party stakeholders into the Global Stocktake process. So I think that perhaps can be taken as an example of how to start bringing these conversations together. And I will stop there. Can I add more?
Thank you. It's very encouraging to hear from you that global stock message is enough to bring the necessary funding for the non-state actors to continuously engage in the post-Global Stocktake period. I think that's encouraging, at least for us working on the iGST initiative, that we can continue working on this. I think it's a very encouraging message from you. And I think finally, I'd like to come back to Mr. Isaac, if you don't mind, once again. So we heard, a lot of potential roles of different non-state actors can play at this panel discussion, and also from the presentation earlier. And I'm just wondering, you have mentioned in Ghana, you already have NSA engagement in every step of the policy-making process. And I think that is also a very strong message for me to hear from you today. And on the top of that, I'm just wondering, this global stocktake is also recognizing the importance of the governments working together in SA to update NDC. How does this global stocktake result at this COP28 affect the Ghana to if any change that you might think might happen in the process of updating NDC in your country, or it's more like that the process is already been there, so it will be a continuous process. So I hope my question is clear to you.
Your question is very clear. And as we are going with this global stocktake, we are looking at the NDCs, and we are looking at the implementation of these NDCs and where we've gotten so far. So if we after this global stocktake, we realize that the activities we are doing or the implementation is not ambitious enough to achieve what we want to achieve, then that means we have to go back to the drawing board. We have to start from the basis. And going back to the basis means we have to get every stakeholder involved. Now, if you look at, for instance, the developing countries, and most of them has the conditional and the unconditional aspect. Taking the conditional alone, you will see that that is where you need other avenue or other ways of implementing most of your actions. And that is where the carbon market we are talking about comes in. He mentioned about looking at the scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. Now, every institution, every industry wants to reduce their emission one way or the other. So you spoke about the capacity aspect of it. So if you build their capacity, they know that, okay, this areas is where our footprint is more. So how do we actually reduce our footprint at this level? In that case, you are doing it on your own. You are helping your country to meet their NDC too. In that case, you can bring out innovative ideas to update the NDC in the next NDC cycle. Apart from that, you are looking at coming up with sustainable way of doing things. For instance, in Ghana, we are implementing the sustainable agriculture cocoa share landscape projects like this. It's a way of promoting the climate smart agriculture practices and also try to remove some carbon from the atmosphere, aside the agricultural practices alone. Part of the carbon market, we are implementing this AWD, and it's a way of reducing emissions from the rice fields. Aside that, too, the local project is doing some interventions, looking at mitigation co-benefits of adaptation interventions that are happening. So how do you gather all this information so that you can upscale it to a level where you can actually meet your targets, and also how you can come up with innovative. Bear in mind that most of these conditional NDCs that you are going to throw away as a result of this carbon market will end up becoming unconditional. So how do you get activities for that conditional part of it? How do you expand your scope of your NDCs in your updated version, especially looking at it from the GST perspective? If we are to come up with enhanced, ambitious targets, how do you do it? And that is where the innovative ideas I mentioned earlier plays a role. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, yes, I think it's a much more area of improving action, enhancing action is available. And when you update NDC, my understanding is that you are going to look more of the information available from different stakeholders, including when you talk about conditional NDC, that would also include the international collaboration, cooperation, and that you mean, for instance, is carbon markets that will bring additional value for the action undertaken on the ground.
Yes. And I think one thing I would like to add to this is, we have this NSA scattered. Now you have the project developers somewhere, you have the financial institutions somewhere. How do you match make? And that is where the government comes in, to match make these project developers to these investors, so that they can come together, give them that enabling environment for them to operate, in order for you to achieve your NDC. So it's one way getting them on board, it's another way linking them up to help you implement activities to meet your targets.
I see. That's a very interesting idea. I thought the government is more top-down perspective, but you were saying it's more connecting different actors to work together, bringing new actions.
Yeah, so if you don't see it from that top-down approach, you won't get to meet these actors. These actors are at the bottom level. So how do you meet them? It's based on how you engage them, how you try to bring them into your scope before you can see them and match make them. If the developer is doing something somewhere, it's about the institution is coming for license or whatever it is from you to actually project what he's doing. But then you will also get another aspect to see that if you collaborate with this person. For instance, let me give you an example. With this, most of these projects that is ongoing, people need financial institutions to back it up. It's one thing coming up with a project. For instance, if you have all these policies in place, and you don't get implementers, then your policy will be hanging. So you have to go another edge to get these people on board so that they can actually help you meet your target. Because they are not the ones who set the target for you, but they are ready and willing to help you meet that target. So how do you bring them on board? How do you create that enabling environment for them to operate? For you to get that data. You know, when you come to the other side of the region, there are a lot of things that is happening, but getting the data to report on is the problem. So how do you put this into a perspective where everybody will feel happy to come up with that data in order for you to actually, in the situation of this global stocktake, present what you have for us to meet that we are actually addressing the impact we want to address. But then if you don't have this information, if you don't go to that grassroots level to meet these people, you cannot get the information you want.
Thank you very much. I think to me it's already one good example of how government and non-state actors can work together. And thinking of the post-global stock period, it might be very useful to have governments to have such a dialogue across governments, how they work together with non-state actors to update NDC. And I think Ghana example is maybe a unique and very good example of how to do it. Thank you very much for sharing, and please give a big hand again for the panelists. And with this, I would like to now bring back to the first three speakers on the stage. Thank you very much, panelists. So Professor Fo, please come back again, and Danica and Dr. Kwame, very quickly. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Very good.
So we have heard variable stories and input and interesting discussion from the panelists just now. And I'd like to come back to our speakers once again, asking you, thinking of your own initiative project that you presented earlier, what do you think would be your next step? Thinking about the post-global stocktake period, as an NSA, what do you think you would do as a next step when you return home after the COP? So maybe Danica?
This will be short also and simple. Perhaps it would be very important to keep the momentum going and ensuring that there's multi-actor partnerships at all levels, ensuring that also there are opportunities not only for a core group, but there are opportunities also for receivers, such as, let's say, our academic institutions, our local civil society organizations, people's organizations who take part in the conversation. I think the capacity building initiative at the local level is very important so that we will hone, of course, the stories on the ground and elevate it at the national level policy discussions with our governments. I think keeping that momentum would really help shape our next NDC processes.
Thank you, Danica. And Kwame?
Well, I have learned some very interesting information from here, particularly from our government representative from Ghana, to see that their hands are open to welcome civil society. So we would, try as much as possible to lean on that, leverage these opportunities as much as possible to engage in the process. So earlier we were thinking that government would be a bit reluctant, to allow the civil society to come in. Yes, and this is really a very important message, to us. So if all the governments in our region are thinking the same way, then our job is very easy for us. We can really go to each of them and say, this is what we can do. We can help you. Yes, and if the door is going to open like this is very good for us. So it's really given me so many perspectives, how we are going to engage the government and so on, and all of that. So we want to leverage this information as much as possible, engage all the governments in our region to ensure that we can actively participate in the process, since the opportunity is there. The other aspect that I want to add is about what Fernando actually said, that the private sector is there, they want to contribute, they want to be heard, and so on. I think since our hub is open to them as well, but it may be very interesting to extend our hand, to all of them and say, please come on board. As we build capacity and so on, they will also get their capacity built. And maybe we can even get some funds from them as well. So really, I think this is a key message for me, and I just want to say thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you, Kwame and Professor Ho.
Yeah, I think I do agree to what our colleague here say. I think very important is dialogue. The federal government and the local government must be able to have dialogue. What are the things that are required on both sides? And from what I understand, recent discussion with even the central government, we realized this is possible. So the dialogue was able to bring us closer between the national and the non-state actors. The other thing is the buy-in. We realize actually the buy-in is coming more strongly now. The local authorities can see the benefit that if they, because we believe science to action is, if you cannot measure, you cannot control. So I think the stock taking is a first step to able to measure what is the current carbon footprint now, and then from there they can say, oh, well, we are way above or we are way below. So I think this is the buy-in is important, and they begin to understand the importance of this global issue, so they will come in. The third point probably is the co-benefit. What is the co-benefit if they join in this kind of thing? So we always share with them that this is not a silo thing. It's a global people are all doing it. So the example of what KL have shown that they have already attracted a lot of partners, city-to-city collaboration like Tokyo and Saitama. And when other cities see the kind of initiative taken by another cities, there's certainly a lot of things to share, a lot of things to learn from each other. So I believe this is our global issues. We really have to do it together, whether you're developing countries or you're developed countries. I think this is a very important thing. I think that's the reason why the COP is here. I think we really have to learn from each other and try to help each other out. With that, thank you.
Thank you very much for all the comments. That's great. Thank you. And now we are coming to the end of our side event today, and I'd like to invite Executive Director of the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies, Mr. Yasuo Takahashi, to deliver his closing remarks.
Thank you, Umemiya-san, for your kind introduction. Good evening, everyone. It is my great pleasure to have this opportunity to deliver the closing remarks on behalf of the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies, IGES. First of all, let me express my sincere appreciation to the co-organizers of this important event, West African Science Service Center on Climate Change and Adaptation Land Use, the University of Technology Malaysia, Institute for Climate and Sustainable Cities, the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research of South Africa, and the Climate Works Foundation. I would also like to thank all the speakers and the panelists for sharing their insightful views and valuable experiences. And most importantly, I would like to thank you all in this room for your active participation. The key to successfully implementing the Global Stocktake is the collaboration between governments and non-state actors. It has been wonderful to see how participants with diverse background and from different regions have shared experiences and ideas to promote such collaboration at today's event. IGES has been engaged with the iGST Southeast Asia Hubs project since 2022, together with a number of partner organizations from the region, from this region. There has been also growing attention in Japan with regard to the Global Stocktake. This is due to the fact that the outcome of the GST is directly linked to updating NDCs and actions by non-state actors, as we learned at today's event. We need to gain more understanding of how governments and non-state actors can collaborate in the follow-up of the GST at multiple levels. We need creative ideas how to ensure that the collaboration contributes to filling the gaps identified in the Global Stocktake. I believe today's event was able to provide an opportunity for us to discuss these important points. In conclusion, let me wish you a very productive time at COP28, and I sincerely hope that you will continue to be part of our network for collaboration, including the IGST. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Takahashi, and thank you everyone for coming to our side event. This is the end of our event today. Thank you.